10초 후에 시작하겠습니다.
All right, so we will start in 10 seconds.
들어오세요.
All right, please come in and have a seat.
네, 안녕하십니까.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. I am the director of the KAIST, FINST&P, and today we are having a workshop on the transition to the AI economy and techno-humanism. I welcome everyone. I am the head of the KAIST, FINST&P, Kim Yong-hee. And I will serve as the MC for today's event. And so this morning we had another forum, which was the inaugural forum for the AI Philosophy Research Center. And the beginning of AI philosophy is AI economy. Most of economic activity is now we can see AI and robots helping or even replacing humans, and we believe that this age will soon be upon us. So then what should we do? Are humans necessary? Are humans needed? Some people ask if only the plumbers or masseuses will survive. And the question, some people even ask, will humans be able to survive? So it's a very large and difficult question. Today, we will be able to hear many insights and concerns about this issue, and we will be able to share them. And we have 5 presentations, and afterwards we will have a panel discussion. All right, so first of all, we would like to ask the chair of the Board of Trustees of KAIST to hear her opening speech. Thank you.
President Lee, are you going to give your opening remarks? No? Okay. The morning session was a very success, and it's good to see you again in the afternoon session as well. I was given 10 minutes to talk. Now is 2:07. This is opening remarks, but while preparing, they've asked me for PPT material, so I have prepared some. I think AI is opening up a new chapter for the humanity. There are 2 grounds. One of the documentaries that I saw, the name is Big History. There were 2 big things that was impressive. One is Cosmos, and the other is History of the World, as shown here in the PPT. It was aired through BBC in 2012, and it consists of 8 episodes. The content is very interesting. It encompasses 70,000 years of human history. It says it marks the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989 and the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991. And says that these 2 big events marks a new beginning of a new era. And it views that 1997 is the beginning of the new era, with the artificial intelligence Deep Blue defeating chess champion Garry Kasparov And it depicts that as the start of this new chapter in human history. While watching the documentary, I thought, is that true? I wasn't so sure. And March 9th, 2016, at the Four Seasons, when the master Lee Se-do had played the game of Go with AlphaGo, actually, I had the chance to be in the room right next to that event and watch the event. And Klaus Schwab had written his famous novel of the Fourth Revolution. And before that, I served many roles, and in 2016's February, I served as the first woman chair for the KAIST board. And in 2016, there was this big game between Master Lee Se-do and AlphaGo. And while serving my role as the president since 2016, there was this novel that I've just mentioned, written by Klaus Schwab. And all those little slots and events accumulating, I've written about these developments myself. And in 1929, with the fall of the Wall Street, it led to the Great Depression. I've contemplated why such financial disruption happened, why the Great Depression happened. And while writing the book, I did my research, and MIT professor Edward had written about the Big Bang, with the creation of the universe, being, and also the AI. He said that these three things are the big events that really changed and reshaped our lives. He talked about that in an interview in 1970s. Actually, Professor Edward Fredkin dropped out of college, but eventually he became a professor at MIT. And while supporting some competitions, he seeked and developed talent in the field of AI. And following that, what I want to introduce is, in the interest of time, I'll try to be brief. AI Philosophy Research Center was opened by MIT, and there are many other universities that have such centers, and one of them is Stanford, and it has human-centered AI, which was opened in 2019. And there was a report filed by that institute, Artificial Intelligence Index Report. Geoffrey Hinton is the godfather, and there's also the godmother of the AI, and she's the co-director here. This report says many things, and I have summarized them into 12, which is outlined here in the PPT. If I have to cover all this, I won't be able to encompass all the content within time. It's difficult to read, but actually it's very
이것도 역시 차트 8까지 있는데
And this report also consists of 8 chapters.
차트 8
Chapter 4 and Chapter 8,
이코노미이기 때문에
I've highlighted them in red, economy and public opinion. These two things will be covered in my
드리고자 합니다.
presentation.
보시면
So if you look here, there are pages.
들어가면 다 있거든요. 좀 참고하시면
So you can refer to the page number that I've included in my slide.
할수 없이 건너뛰겠습니다.
So I'll skip to the next slide in the interest of time.
보이시나요? 제목
Can you see the title?
네. 6, 7,
6 and 7,
같더라고요. 그다음에
8, 9,
8, 9, 10
10.
해서 그 데이터를 분석을 한 결과를 제시를 하고 있습니다.
So it suggests the results of the data data research.
된 얘기는 아니지만 경제적인 임팩트가 너무 크기 때문에
It says that the economic impact is so great.
이 가장 절실한 게 특히 대한민국
The most dire thing here is electricity. For Korea, electricity shortage is the most important thing. If we delve into electricity, I'd have to elaborate, so I won't be able to do so. So in Chapter 8, Public Opinion, there's a summary of that.
제가 말씀드리고 싶은 것은
So today what I want to mention is that, for instance, for the OECD AI principles,
value로 봤을 때
there are values suggested in that principles, and also recommendations for policymakers.
AI 경제를 진흥해야 하지만
These are the things that show that, of course, we have to develop AI,
그걸 강조한
but in line with that, there's some values that we need to pursue and things that policymakers should take into consideration.
지금 보면은 추세는 다 경제적으로만 가고 있습니다.
Currently, I think the conversations and dialogues are very centered towards promoting the economy.
배치를 했는데
It includes promotion and also regulation.
반복되는 거 아니야? 이런
But the press depicts this as saying that won't regulations hinge on and
제가 아까 말씀드렸던
the development of the AI? Wouldn't it intervene?
강한 경제가
If you look at the back slide,
왜 대공황을
I've mentioned that I've delved into the issue of Great Depression, and with regards to that, Ben Bernanke wrote about the Great Depression, and he wrote a book, and he received an award for that. And also there's another book written by Andrew
날카로운 소kin의
Ross Sorkin,
그다음에 또 narrative economics
1929, and also Narrative Economics, written by Nobel laureate Robert Shiller.
경제 그것이 AI이기 때문에 매우 그
So-
투기적 기술 자본주의 아주 전형으로 보는 거죠.
They see
그 내용을 요약한 것이
AI
지금
as a speculative investment tools.
시간이 됐네요. 그래서
I think time is up.
저는 이제 과학자니까
Well, as a scientist, I'm very optimistic about AI.
비관론
Of course, there's pessimism about AI as well.
조화롭게 가야 된다.
I think there should be some good balance and coordination between the two. That's the big question.
구현을 위해서
And in order to realize the AI powerhouse, what should we do? And what things we should do for what reasons. That's I've summarized that into this slide. But I'm running out of time. But to be short, for instance, Great Depression happens when
지금 AI니 뭐 디지털
real materials start to crumble,
그 허구가 될 수 있나
real acid.
그런 우려가 나오고 있고 그걸 해결하기 위해서 AX
And with relation to AI, we're also talking about such concerns. That's the reason why we should promote AX, AI transformation.
막을 수 있어야 한다. 금융의 역할도
And I think the role of finance is also important here. And as a result, because this is a shift and change in civilization, so we cannot uphold our economy based on the previous GDP. So it should be interdisciplinary, and we should collaborate different areas to promote this growth. But it's difficult to do that. So we can say that we face a very challenging and difficult question ahead. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Chair, for your wonderful presentation. Because we're tight on schedule, other presenters can have this Q&A session through this panelist talks. But if you have any questions to our chair, I'll give you an opportunity to do so. If there's not, because it was a big topic. So once again, I would like to thank our chair for her great presentation. Okay, now we are going to start off with the presentations. We have Professor Kim Ji-hee from KAIST BTM, and she's going to talk about this economic growth and productivity in the era of AI. Please welcome her. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Professor Kim Ji-hee at KAIST Business Technology Management. Actually, I graduated from KAIST, received my bachelor's degree, but I studied economics as I advanced to this graduate school, and I studied macroeconomics. And I look economics in a long term, like from 50 years. And even more than that, so I look into economic growth over that long period of time. And I may be talking about some of the very abstract things because I'm going to talk about something that is after 50 and 100 years. Because if you look at this, economic growth in the era of AI over the next 50 or 100 years. So when we talk about AI, I first need to talk about economic growth, and on top of that topic, I'm going to talk about artificial intelligence as well. So first, I'm going to ask you a question. So which country fits this description? So life expectancy is under 50 years. 1 out of 10 children dies before their first birthday, and over 90% of households do not have electricity. And fewer than 10% of adults have graduated from high school. Where do you think this is? Korea? Okay. So this is not the time. This is not the time frame that I'm talking about, because when I give this type of lecture, a lot of people guess North Korea, but I did my studies on North Korea, and they are well off than this country. And the lowest life expectancy is a specific country in Africa, which means is that this is not this time frame, and this is the United States in 1880. So this was the economy and the economic situation in the United States. So then I have next question. So then what would be, then after 1880, what was the GDP per capita annually after 1880 until now? So President, do you know? So then I'll give you some of these. So 1%, 2%, 3%, 4%, 5%. So he guessed 1%. That is a great answer. Well, so this is the question that I ask every time I go out to the lecture. So I asked the undergrad students. So there was, and I also asked the Korean doctors the same question, as well as to our professors.
And also I asked the students who are taking our business courses, and they are the ones who know the business quite well, and the answer was 2%. And so like president's answer was quite impressive because it was quite close to the right answer. So I usually ask, the participants of the events usually, but I also showed some of the answers that were given, like of the surveys that I've conducted. So if you look at the United States GDP growth, like the Y is log, and as you can see, this gradient is the annual growth, and it was on average there was 2% growth. From 1880, they grew roughly 2% every year, and that's what created what's America today. So what was the driving forces of the United States growing 2% per year? So actually, so there were a lot of drastic transformations compared to 100 years ago, within 150 years. And if you take a look at it, what the drivers were of this economic growth was actually technology. So there are so many different technologies, sailing ships, aspirin, and vaccine, and internets, and all these big technologies. So all these big technologies development, especially in the United States. The United States took the most advantage of these new technologies, and it gave only 2% growth. So I'm not sure how you're going to think about how you feel about this 2% growth, because some people thought that they could have achieved much higher growth. But 2% is higher as more than you think, because if grows 2% annually, then the economic size doubles in every 35 years. So it was because it was able to grow 2% every year. It was United States became the big country that it is today. So all these technological innovations gave 2% growth annually. And if we think how AI will influence the economic growth in the United States, we need to forecast, look into the future. I'm not sure if you remember in 2020, before COVID-19 pandemic, people worried a lot about the U.S. economy, because in the 2007, 2008, there's financial crisis, and it was still in that financial crisis, it wasn't able to come out of it. And everyone thought that, this low growth is the new normal, and we should no longer think about achieving 2% growth. But, after going through this COVID-19 and having ChatGPT, it has actually picked up its pace again. But however, after this emergence of AI, will this low growth continue? And there's this other question. Because of AI, can we recover our 2% growth annually? And the third question was, can we achieve this growth over 2% every year? And the other question was that, or can we hope for this explosive growth because of this AI? So these are the 4 questions that people had in their mind. Okay, let's see. So my personal view is that AI is current, or the next big thing for sure, but is it different from other technological innovations, or will it bring growth other than 2% growth? So what does the economists think about this? So
실러도 이사장님 보여주셨는데 그 로버트
Uh,
실러 같은
Robert Schiller, who is the Nobel laureate,
가지고 이제 설문을 하는데요.
so the survey was conducted
그래서 설문 조금 복잡해요.
by
앞으로 10년간 AI 사용, 그러니까 2025년부터 2035년까지 AI를 쓰면
the survey was conducted to this like Nobel laureates, and the question was: use the artificial intelligence over the next 10 years will have substantially bigger impact on the growth rates of real per capita income in the United States and Western Europe over the subsequent 2 decades than the internet has had over the past 2 decades. So these were the responses that came out from them. And most of them have answered uncertain. So they're quite honest about their answers.
근데 이거는 지금 제가 써놨지만 2023년에
And this question was asked in 2023. And the similar question was asked in 2025. So the question was, adoption of artificial intelligence will lead to a substantial increase in the growth rates of real per capita income in the United States and Western Europe over the next 10 years. The answers changed slightly, but still like people answer that it's uncertain. And also the European economists, had similar thoughts.
그래서 불확실하다.
So
알기가 힘든 거예요.
it's very difficult to predict.
생각은 그렇고
So that's what our economists think. And if we look at other people's, forecast, if you look at Goldman Sachs and McKinsey Global Institute, they have forecasted some of how like AI will, impact productivity in the United States over the next 10 years. And, as you can see, their forecasts vary. And why is there such difference? Because there are so many like uncertainties in so many different dimensions. So there is like technological uncertainties, and also like uncertainties in our works and tasks and human capabilities, and as well as the uncertainties in economy. And we say that AI is going to replace our people, the workers. Then we need to have any questions about how much can it replace it. And when we talk about this economic uncertainties, if it is possible to like replace, then how is it going to get replaced, or will there be like more benefits than and also this is something about the speed of the advancement. So there are optimists like Sam Altman, and there are Yan Rukun or Andrew Ng. They are quite pessimistic about the adaptation speed of this AI, because they are in this industry. That's what they had all these like varied responses. But if you look at the AI researchers, they're quite conservative than what we think, because the chance of unaided machines outperforming humans in every possible task was estimated at 10% by 2027 and 50% by 2047. So they are having like conservative stance than what we think that they have. So they say that like some of them are like overexcited, because there's like technological uncertainty lies in the industry, is still like also in the academia as well. So something that's certain is that everything's so uncertain and it's going to take time. So AI is the current or the next big thing for sure, and it's going to have an impact on our economic growth as well as the productivity. But it's going to take time at the same time. The reason for that is because AI is GPT itself, and when we talk about GPT, it's not the ChatGPT like generative pre-trained transformer, but instead we're talking about general purpose technology. Because such GPT is the technology that can influence across our society. So AI is part of GPT, and the impact and the effect of GPT taking place in our society, it's very slow. So let me give you an example of electricity, because for AC to be standardized and for it to be accepted by the country, like even though it was standardized like 30 years later, like in 1990 in the United States, only half of the production factories used were operated without electricity. So which means is that it takes time to adopt this like new technology. So if we take a look back at the graph that we looked before earlier, so in macro point of view, it's going to take time for us to adopt AI across our society. So, United States are the technological frontiers of AI, but for it to be adopted right across the society, it's going to take time. And roughly like 95% of the businesses that tried to adopt this generative AI failed. And for it to take this productivity effect, it's taking some time. So I feel like we're in transition. And yet people say that, the tipping point is near us because, Elon Musk came out on the Moonshot podcast and he says that we're at the singularity point. So the technological tipping point, for it to be translated into this economic tipping point, is very difficult because of this almost cost disease. Because as AI replaces people, it's going to increase the productivity. But however, if we cannot automate AI and if it cannot replace people in certain areas, then productivity will slow down because of that person, and that majority is the deciding factor for the speed of the economic growth. But because I do not have enough time, I'm just gonna move on. He is like on the same page as me, and so to sum it up, this technological innovation is going to be the driving force of the economic growth, and future AI will be the driving force of the economic growth in the future. But however, it's going to its impact, whether it's going to be bigger than we think, is still uncertain, and it's going to take time to be adopted, and it's going to be slower than what we think. I have went over a little bit of the time that was given to me, but I'm going to conclude my presentation, and I will talk more later on in the panel's talks.
Thank you, Professor Kim, for your insightful speech on grand economy. I think we're going to be running short on time, so I'll tell the presenters to be on time. So I'll spare that time for panel discussions for Q&A. Next is Professor Young-Sun Kwon, Professor, School of Business and Technology Management. The title is AI Transformation, Structural Changes and Challenges in the Economic System. Thank you for that. I'm going to talk about how AI transformation is going to affect the economic system, the direction, and what we're going to see in the near future. But since I cannot talk this and that, I'm going to give it some shape. First, talk about some premises, and in this order, as shown on the slide. Actually, I studied urban economics. And after that, I did AI and industrial economics. So first, I started in the macroeconomics sector. And as an urban economics perspective, why do cities emerge, grow, and decline? That kind of perspective, in that kind of perspective, I think we can project the impact of AI. But of course, there are so many parameters and factors because the world is fragmented, and there is inter-Korea relations, the U.S.-Korea relations. So regardless of that, we're going to focus on the effect of just AI and animal. So what is the essential difference between animals and humans? The difference between city and human is because on the left side it is the wild and the right is the urban area. Animals cannot change their environment and they do not try to change their environment. They only adapt. But for human beings, unlike animals, we have transformed this wild into city and urban areas. Then, how can human beings transform their environment? In the wider perspective, as an economist, we create surplus, we accumulate that, reinvest that, and these surpluses, when accumulated, we can do some things that we could not have done before. So how can we have done so? As for human beings, if we had just produced something and consumed that within one day, we would not have been able to create the current environment that we live in. If we were in that kind of environment as animals, would we been able to create the current world? But, well, that's not the case. Human beings were able to produce surpluses, accumulate that, and reinvest that. So if I delve deeper into this issue, as for surpluses, for instances, I do not produce rice and meat that I consume. There's producer. I just consume. As for the income, I produce income in my area. Well, this is not directly related to survival, but it's something related to intelligence. So I'm a being that engages in the field of intelligence and produce income within that. So we can do education, research, and accumulation of intelligence. And then we create more surpluses. And then we can enjoy art, culture, sports, and tourism. So human history, in the long run, can be seen as the humanization of the process of surplus accumulation, and we reinvest that. And that course was actually very brutal. While civilization developed, the best example of accumulation was slavery, and then it was colonial system, colonizing others and slaves and making them into slaves. But rather than that, now we are experiencing advances in science and technology, and we have achieved economies of scale based on that growth. But we cannot fully trust humans, because what we see now, I'm a little concerned that we might go back to the old days these days. But as for the macroeconomic system, everything that is produced is either consumed or invested. So productivity is dividing total accumulation by per person who produced that. And then if we divide that into the number of people living in specific region, that is GDP. For the past years, we have created a virtual circle where we export, increase income, and then increase productivity. And within that virtuous circle, there comes investment and employment. So in just 60 years, we've been able to develop this economy into $40,000 GDP per capita. And when the economy is sluggish, we give some stimulus and boost. But 60 years since, in the current economic condition, if we look back, would we have been able to replicate this kind of virtuous circle in the past? No. This has been possible because our economy was open to the world market. So despite Korea being a small country, we've been able to achieve this remarkable growth. So what I've just mentioned is the premise, the viewpoint of what I will be elaborating on from now on. And I'll be talking about AI's impact on the economic system. AI is poised to fundamentally reshape our way of life. So, Samsung, in celebration of the Year of the Red Horse, they have came up with this headings, HORSE. So some of the hot topics that was shown in CES 2026. Regardless of the sections, there's one common keyword. That is AI. AI is going to innovate and drive innovation in all sectors. So what kind of impact is AI going to have on our economy? First, well, of course, there's also always good news and bad news. The good news is that surplus is going to increase. With AI in production stages, we'll be able to increase productivity. So it's going to produce a leap forward in the productivity. It can exponentially grow, and it's very likely. And the second is that the second renaissance of human civilization. So we're going to turn towards a more abstract and more service-oriented industries. And such industries are going to grow. And there's an area where AI's explosive impact could be made is nuclear fusion. And then we'll be able to open a new chapter in our civilization. When we have infinite amount of energy, there's going to be a grand shift. And also there's advanced materials and expansion of bio and healthcare sector as well. And in the past, we've always been trying to cure diseases, but the current bio and healthcare industries are in the stages as if we were in the first industrial revolution. So they're in very primitive and early stages. So it can have exponential and explosive impact, for instance, like in the labor and employment sector. So I think that AI can lead to job displacement and also worsening income and wealth inequality as well. Because between people who utilizes AI and who doesn't, there's going to be some gap. And then there's going to be a shift toward control and surveillance society as well, because all information is going to be concentrated, and in other words, control and surveillance is going to be possible. And during the production stages, there's going to be an anomaly, social anomaly, for instance, like drugs. and the family breakdown. And with more reliance on AI, there's going to be human degeneration as well. For instance, if someone is very used to using the rear camera to park his or her car, and when there's no camera, he or she is going to have difficulties parking their car. So, using tools and not having tools is going to create some differences. And also, the increase in productivity per capita income is something that I've already touched upon. And another thing is Korea is a small but strong country. In the morning session, we talked about rare earths. Korea actually does not have much rare earth. We rely on China for import. In other words, the areas where we've been able to achieve remarkable strength is advanced areas, and we're also going to replicate that kind of success going forward as well. And we also have to redivide the productivity that we have gained. Per capita is going to increase, but the gap between income and asset is going to worsen. However, as for the disposal income, it's going to increase. And I think that gap is going to be deepened as well. Another thing that we should prepare for is how can we find social system where people can pursue meaning and happiness while not working. So there is a journey ahead where we need to find that kind of path where people find meaning and happiness without relying on full-time employment. So a dual labor market is unavoidable. There's going to be high workload, high tech, and high income versus less work and more leisure and adequate income. So that kind of distribution may be necessary. And last but not least is the restructure of KAIST is to enable an explosion of new scientific and technological innovation. So this is another topic that we should contemplate on. So in closing, Vance's Papao said, actually he's a person who worked in the auto industry, and he said, I'm a person who worked physically, but in your generation, you need to go to college. You're not hands, but with your intellect and your brain. But the current condition is that is the next generation where Vance has been talking about. So next generation will be utilizing AI, robots, and to share surpluses. To do that, to move up was to move on. Because move up and the move on, the distinction between the two may be blurred. As a person who's teaching at KAIST, the direction of research university is not going to change. It's the value that we should pursue continuously. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Kwon, for your presentation. I believe there will be many questions.
패널 토의 시간에
And so we will take the questions during our panel discussion.
다음 발제는
Next presenter is Professor Park Sung-hyuk from
AI 시대의 비즈니스
KAIST College of Business, and he will give a presentation on the business strategy in the age of AI.
Thank you very much for your introduction. My name is Park Sung-hyuk. I came from Seoul. Actually, I studied math and I entered college in 2001, so it's been a while since I've been here at campus, and it's very good to be back. I'll be talking about business strategy in the age of AI. Economists looks at the forest, but us, we look at each and every trees, how that fruit was bared from that tree. So I'm going to have a look at the examples and look at some interesting examples. In order for businesses to grow, they should utilize AI, and in that respect, all those some small successes of businesses is going to create and consist the economy as a whole. So there's one thing I would like to mention about my profile. Actually, I have created my own business named Impact AI while serving as a faculty member. So how to utilize AI and how to make money out of AI. Can we really do that? That's some things that I've worked on. So the first movement in human history. I think you have looked at this graph quite often. If there's two lines, which line are you going to aim for? The line where AI outperforms the green line here. So traditionally, based on machine learning, we have created software based on that. And we have created this great invention based on AI, and we've been able to produce this green curve here. So the X curve is amount of data, and the Y line is performance. So the data point on the right side at the tip, that's ChatGPT falls upon here, and AlphaGo falls upon here as well. When human creates, human cannot outperform AI because we cannot consume that the grand and massive amount of data such like AI. So for instance, when we take pictures and to match the person's picture with the profile, AI has 99% accuracy. But when I give 2 billion pictures and ask a KAIST student to match one-on-one, they'll be tired and they will eventually give up. But with deep neural network, this is a game that was possible with the help of AI. So that's why we see this green graph here. It says universal approximation theorem. So when AI learns, when we give a lot of data into that, machine can learn, and that's been proven, and we have implemented that. And with the massive amount of textual data that humanity have produced, and now we have created a machine that excels in linguistic capabilities. And the result is ChatGPT. Whether or not we can make that or not is not because humans are smart, but because we have input a lot of data And the result is very capable machine. Why can't we produce performance like deep learning? Because in the past we had data experts. So like the second picture here, feature extraction is something that people did, human beings did. So creating rules and analyzing that. When human beings are involved in that process, the result is the capability of that human being, but we have surpassed that with machines. Because all that process was actually done by machines. So classifications, extraction, classification, and the output was all done by machines with massive amount of data and created that intelligence. So we created that novelty, an invention. For instance, when we have a newcomer with 390 IQ, depending on what kind of project is given to that person, the result will be different. If we do not know how smart that person is, if we do not train that person in the right way, human beings cannot produce good results. So in that sense, human beings weren't fully prepared, but we have these very intelligent machines already. So one day, I had dinner with a doctor who created OpenAI. So I asked him, what's the recipe? How did you create that? He said that a lot of people came from Google, but none of them had never tried to teach. He said that we shouldn't try to teach a language. Instead, we must let the machine learn on its own, on their own. So they did not really teach the machines, but machines did it themselves. I think it's very similar to Eastern philosophy. When we let our guard down, let ourselves down, then becomes revelation. So if you look at here, there's a framework here. I'm talking about the same thing, but there are two columns, machine learning and deep learning. So what data was provided by humans, or humans with machines, or machines only? When human data was provided by human, the result was human level. But if the modeling was done by machines, and the result was machine. A lot of researchers are given many grants for their researches, but they do not produce outperforming results. But when we let machines do things on their own, they produce outstanding performances. So there should be an AI mind shift here. We have not seen such novel machines before, because KAIST students cannot outperform AIs. And now we should think that, we can really solve this problem through machines, and we should think out of the box. So this is a case study of Kyobo Book Center. They came to my research center and said that there's been a surge in online sales, and they asked me to do some demand forecasting and inventory management. So, and they asked me to do this through AI. As a result, the left graph here, that was their existing prediction, and the right side is the AI applied prediction. So if you look, the right side looks more like daily traffic, right? So the blue algorithm here is the average of the 4-week sales. So they say, let's say average of 4 weeks. Average is good, well, but they also merge in the middle. So you cannot find the daily traffic precisely. When they overperform, when there's more sales, there suffers, and that becomes inventory cost. For me, like who studies businesses, when inventory is there, it leads to cost, and cost is something that we should reduce. And we also did some business impact of demand and forecast analytics as well. So we have created a system where AI can order 28 days in advance and to match the demand. And I think researchers at AI colleges would know better, but with this result that I gave to Kyobo bookstore, he asked, can you forecast the demand for a newly released book? And I said, oh, why do you ask me that question? And then suddenly I thought, there's a problem that human beings cannot resolve, but there's some questions that or challenges that machines can resolve. So you let the machines read 100,000 books and then analyze the front pages of the book as well. And then I asked the machine to forecast the demand for this book. If I had this task given to a student, he or she wouldn't have been able to handle that. But machine was able to do so, and then analyze the images, analyze the writers, analyze the book company, and then with that data, they've been able to find books that are going to really sell okay and not going to sell well. We have not been able to find the outliers, the books that are going to really sell well. Do you see the book in the middle? We read books for animals. If that book was displayed in the Kyobo Book Center, it wouldn't really have sold well. But AI actually read the book and had 85% accuracy on the sales prediction, which was 40% more precise than existing prediction. Kyobo Book Center was really pleased with this result because this is something that human beings cannot do. And with the help of AI, the MD team of Kyobo Book Center really have been improved. So this is one of the most representative examples. Another episode that I want to share is that if I want to use AWS, it would cost 30 million won. So to reduce the cost, I only had 5% of the book read by the machine. And when we go to bookstores, we read the first bits of the book, and that was actually used in the press as of an activity that's similarly done by human beings. So whatever the question, machines answer. So that smart machine is there, but no human beings can be as smart as machines. So in the interest of time, I will conclude with our second point. This is how I interpret Gen AI. Now, data is produced by Gen AI because Gen AI itself produces data. As for educational data, it's not provided by humans, but it's created by machines and also consumed by machines and used by machines. So 5 years ahead or 10 years ahead, I think machines are going to produce much better data. And through that, we'll be able to learn. So this is how machines are going to produce the best performance and result. You know AlphaGo, right? AlphaGo did not learn through humans playing the game of Go. AlphaGo learned by playing the game of Go with another machine. So in human civilization, in order to make a machine that plays the game of Go, you have to let the machine learn by itself and engage with other machines. When leaders realize this, they will realize that without data, you can actually produce some outcomes through machines. So regardless of autonomous driving companies producing data, for instance, rocks falling or pigs running on crazy on the road, you cannot predict that. For instance, there was an accident in California, and Waiver, the autonomous taxis, stopped. And the StratVision had trained these autonomous drivings through machines in many predictable environments. I'm doing a business in the field of digital marketing, and recently there's been a dog studying English. Have you seen that video? It's something that human beings cannot even film. Thinking that dogs can learn English, it's interesting, so people try to learn more English because the dog learning English is funny. So that's something that we're utilizing. It's something that we cannot film in studio, but AI can produce that kind of content. So for business leaders who are very keen and leading in this area are already utilizing this cutting-edge technology. So we're looking at these goals, leadership models, and core capabilities of companies. As for Korea, government plans and private sectors execute. But for the US, big techs are leading. And for Korea, our strength is in semiconductor and manufacturing. So, like the framework that I gave, they're utilizing engineers who can utilize such frameworks. So in closing, what I've just talked about in today's presentation is encompassed in my new book. If you can predict the future, you can see the money. Despite my presentation being short, you can refer to my newly released book. So with that, I would like to conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Park. So I think we need to invite Professor Park again. All right. And so, last but not least, Professor Kim Min-gi from the KAIST College of Business will give a presentation about the decision-making in an AI-based economy and the role of humans. Hello, I am Kim Min-gi, and I'm just arrived from Seoul. And I'm currently the head of the Professional Business Graduate School. And the presenters before me, there were two economists. So I want to put in simpler words, the economy is kind of like physics, and business is like a transdisciplinary field that can solve the problems of business. So I would like to explain to you about decision-making in an AI-based economy and how we can make value in this AI-based economy, and in this process, what are the ups and downs of this AI-based economy, and in this situation, what kind of role humans will have. So that is what I'm going to talk about today. So first of all, talking about economic efficiency, as you see on the left, there are several examples of how AI-based innovation has led to value creation in the industry. So the business people in the business divide this into predictive maintenance to storage management. So there are several value chains within a company, and they see how each part can lead to more money. So within the value chain, they see how these different aspects play a role. And so I want to expand these a little bit more. So this is something I developed in 2024. So in the very center of the semicircle, you see the AI core technologies. So for example, in KAIST, you're currently developing these new core technology. And the second layer are the applications that are made that can be used by companies. So mostly it's the startups that take up this part, and they see what can be done with the AI technologies. The third layer is the most important. It is the company value chain and finding the problems of domains. So for example, you can see that in each value chain, the companies can figure out what their problems are, and then they can figure out how to make money. And then the fourth layer is to solve the domain issues to make money. So then how are these AI technologies changing? 1 year ago in CES 2025, I believe you may have already seen this 5-stage development of AI. And the third stage is generative AI, fourth is agentic, and fifth is physical AI. And after that presentation, we've already seen a lot of these technologies actually be commercialized. In Korea, there's only one, but many companies are joining physical AI. So as we saw before, the development of technology, how does this actually help companies in terms of value chain? For example, for healthcare, you can see the value chain. So in the green is the traditional AI range, and then the blue part is the generative AI range. So it is the EBITDA increase that can be found by using not only traditional AI, but also generative AI. For example, let's say there is a patient that was taken to the emergency room, and this patient was an immigrant worker. But the problem is they need some simultaneous interpretation for the patient. But if you look at the current system, for example, in Seoul City, they have a QR code where they can help and call for a professional interpreter. But if you use AI, you can communicate with the immigrant right away. So we can use AI to create value. And what that means is that we can solve the issues in the domain within a company's value chain to see how we can solve those issues and lead to more profit. And as I will say before, the College of Business already teach our students about this. Then we can make money through technology, but then what are the structural vulnerabilities of AI? So this is a reading list from a class that I taught in the first semester of 2024. So that was the time when ChatGPT was being very widely used. So the school said, let's make talents who ask questions. So I wanted to have many debates with our students. So that is why I came up with this reading list. I first told them to watch the movie Minority Report. I said, let's watch the movie and meet. And this movie was made in 2002. I think some of you might not have seen it, but if you watch it, Tom Cruise is the main character, and they can predict crimes, and then so the police goes to the crime scene in advance to prevent the crime. So they find the potential crimes and prevent it. That was talked about 23 years ago. And then, second, I had them read things on personalized advertising. And then they were asked to read about living with machines. Fourth, co-working with machines. And then, fifth, I would tell them to watch Ready Player One or the movie Her. Her was in theaters in 2003, and it is about personalized generative AI. And Ready Player One is me leaving the physical world and playing a game in the metaverse. So I told them to watch these movies. And then lastly, I said, let's discuss coexisting with machines. And the reason I talked about this is because we talked about when we make value with AI. The economic subject is humans. So we are the consumers, but we are also the workers who work with AI. We also co-work with machines. And we could even be the creators in this AI technology because we are humans. And so I think that is the light and darkness of AI. And one good example is the ability to explain. And I think these words are used differently from engineers and social scientists because explainability for engineers means being able to explain AI, but for social scientists, it's not just looking at the coaddition, but looking at the coalition. So finding the cause-result relationship. So let's say we want to set a car insurance premium. If an insurance company decides to set a different premium for women and men, then that is acceptable. But let's say AI says, let's set it different based on religion. And they say that there's a prediction that people of a certain religion make more car accidents. Then what would happen? Because we are humans, this kind of automated decision making will not be accepted. So there are many problems with AI. And also another issue is that the data itself could be biased. And that is an important point that we need to think about. An example of this, some companies are using AI interviews to screen applicants to their company. And even here, there is a difference in the data because when a company chooses what kind of person they want to hire, they want to look at whether this person will adapt, whether they will make good outputs. And there are very many different values that companies look for. But the problem is because of the way the AI is designed, it may lead to a person who is not right for the company passing the screening. And then another issue is Stitch Fix. So this was a person who graduated from Harvard and received their MBA from another prestigious university, and they had a good idea to predict what kind of clothing people want. And then they made this subscription model so that the AI would predict what clothes they would like, and then they can return the clothes that they don't want, and then that would be, again, training for the AI. But this system, I want to talk about this company because when people get the clothes and then when they open it, in the beginning they had the human stylist's name on the box who recommended that clothing, because if they think that AI chose those clothing for them, then they're not happy about it because they are human. So we call this AI aversion in the academic field. So by solving this problem of AI aversion, Stitch Fix found a better business model. Going on to medical AI, let's say there is a AI that has 90% accuracy and a human doctor who has an 80% accuracy of diagnosis. Who will you choose? according to surveys, people will rather choose the doctor with a lower level of accuracy. That is because when it comes to medicine or remote medicine, there is the comparison between human doctors and the AI doctors. And when it comes to price setting, people don't trust AI. So this is another big issue in AI. And then we talked mostly about AI from the consumer perspective. What about the worker? So for when you have new employees, you want to train them, and it's important who trains them and how. According to research, for the middle managers, if they receive a lot of training from AI, they tend to make a lot of good input because they already have a lot of experience, so they can receive help, or very highly experienced people have an aversion to AI. The lowly skilled workers don't really understand the AI, so the middle-level managers actually respond best to AI training. Another example is even if AI gives help, then a lot of workers still are averse to AI. So even if a company brings in AI, it doesn't necessarily mean that will lead to positive results. So AI, you can see the expansion of AI and this creation of this industry organism. Agentic AI is really the end of business as usual because, for example, there are many sequential tasks that can be solved by AI. So, for example, if you want to plan a trip, you would usually go to several apps, but now AI will go to each and every app and solve the issue right away. So, for example, we have something called the synthetic consumer, where the data from our past is used to create a digital twin. And instead of asking me or hearing the details from me, they can already predict my needs or my response. So then there's also the question is what will happen if we use agentic AI using the synthetic consumer? So already we have physical AI, for example, we see this in robots in Amazon, but we don't know what kind of problems that could lead to. So another example is a really hot topic right now is the real page issue. So if you rent a house or if you're trying to rent out a house, AI algorithm plays a role in actually leading to a collusion of the house rent prices. So for the company, they want to make the company make the best decision, but because they only look at the data, there is the issue of data ethics. Another issue is a different center, the rise of a different center. For example, we are usually used to going to these super platforms ourselves. So we would use Amazon or Cotis.com to buy things or buy a service. But then when the role of AI agents is bigger, then we will no longer go to the apps ourselves. And then the super platforms will be bypassed and the AI companies will play a bigger role. And what can happen here? The problem is that these AI agents may be biased toward their own companies. For example, if I ask ChatGPT something, then they may first of all focus on the companies that they are connected to or their sponsors. So, of course, there is this issue of manipulation of the market. So, then what is the role of humans? I think there is a passive and active role that humans can play. Currently, physical AI, we are seeing a lot of new efforts in physical AI. And many workers, it is predicted that many workers will lose their job. But then, so how will their jobs be replaced? So I talked about the way that the unspoken knowledge, for example, there are 600 tasks, and there is a skilled worker of each jobs, then they can create an AI to structurize that data and that knowledge. Another example would be in factories where there are no workers at all. For example, the Xiaomi Stark factory where there are no humans. So what we can do, recently in CES 2026, we have seen the coalition of several different industries. For example, related to the dark factory, one company has to do with Hyundai and one has to do with LG, the robots. And so just like we have the competition between Apple and Google, there is a competition between Tesla and Nvidia. And just like the Alpha Neo, they can make these autonomous vehicles. And you can see that there's a change in the industry ecosystem, and you can see jobs, the decrease of human jobs. Then we need to think about how we will find a collaboration between humans and robots. First of all, I believe that when companies bring in physical AI, they need to have principles. First of all, the work to go to the AI are the works that is very dangerous, such as being exposed to toxic materials or extreme temperatures. And in cases where it's difficult to have human workers, for example, in certain parts, you need the humans. You can't wait until they are very highly trained. And then there's other issues where the work is very standardized or repetitive, so it is possible to have the AI serve that role. So instead of humans being replaced, we need to go towards human augmentation. And of course, to make this kind of design, many parties will have to come together to make that design. And so N can be something new, or it can be diversity. And we can find ways to use AI in parts of society that we have never thought about before. For example, it can help the disabled. And we can have them join new fields. For example, they can receive help from robots to be more productive. And you can see in the photo the Meta AI glass. And we can create a metaverse where the disabled, they can build a character within the metaverse where they can be active economically. Or they can make an avatar and make money. For example, there are AI characters on the left. They make Instagram handles, and then they can earn sponsored posts. So when we look at AI, we should look at the competition structure and try to solve the issues within the value chain. And this kind of philosophy is something that we are pushing forward in the College of Business. We are actually running a government research project since last year, and we are training leaders for global data integration, and we want to build leaders who can find the issues in the domain and nurture talents who can solve these problems. And I hope that we can discuss more during the panel discussion. And I think it's actually very similar to the actual stage today. I will see you at the panel.
Thank you, Professor Kim Min-gi. So we are done with all these five presenters' presentations. There's roughly 5 minutes break time. So I'd like you to take the break time freely for 5 minutes, and then we're going to continue on with our panelist talk discussion. We have Professor Park Kyung-yeol, who will be leading this panelist talks. So can you please move forward to the stage?
순서가
정말.
네, 안녕하세요. 네, 오늘 우리
Good
국가미대
afternoon.
전략기술정책연구소의 워크샵
So thank you all for joining today's workshop, The Transition to the AI Economy and Techno-Humanism. I'll be leading today's panelist talk. My name is Park Kyung-yeol.
네, 오늘 우리는 단순한 기술 진보를 넘어서
So we're going beyond this technological advancement, and we talked about the economy, and we are at the point to redefine our economy as well. So we're going to talk about the growth as well as like distribution and how we can coexist with AI, and it's going to be held over for 40 minutes, but because we still have 15 minutes, so it's kind of like challenging for us to like lead our talk within 15 minutes. So we have held these like presentations with like 4 KAIST professors, and let me introduce them again. First, KAIST Digital Kim Junhyung professor from the Digital Humanities and Computational Social Sciences, and we have Professor Kim Ji-hee from KAIST College of Business, and Professor Kwon Young-seo, who talked about the structural changes with AI and how we can survive from AI age. Professor Park Sung-hyuk, database and algorithm-based decision-making and human role, who highlighted those issues. Professor Kim Min-gi. So with this short period of time, we talked about humans' values and roles within this era of AI, and we're going to try to find the answers to it. So our panelist talk is actually divided into 3 subtopics. One is growth, distribution, and humans' roles. Actually, when we talk about growth and distribution, it's not the conflict, structural conflict, but it is something that we need to go together. So that's why I'm going to ask the question that encompasses these 2 subtopics. So first, Professor Kim Junhyung, can you talk about it for 5 minutes, and then we'll go through like 2 rounds of these like panelists. So because many of you are participating in today's event, we will try to open up the questions to the floor for roughly 10 minutes. So if director, if you can give me approve whether I can go ahead with like that, then yes, that's the format that I'm going to proceed with. Professor Kim Junhyung. Good afternoon. I'm Professor Kim Junhyuk at the Digital Humanities and Computational Social Sciences, and so I majored in economics. And Professor Kim Min-gi said economics is like physics. So because I did not do well in the physics, but I'm kind of like worried whether I could be the economist. But anyways, there were some really good presentations, so I'm not sure how I can add on to it. But if I go on. So one of the concerns that we have with AI is that as the AI advances, will there be still some roles, left for the humans to take over? So for that, I would like to give you a few of my opinions. So I feel like this like personal characteristics is still given to people. And one professor said, people do not want to hear to AI, and one of the reasons is because it's my personal opinion. Because when we hear other people's opinion, and if there's any issues with it, then we go to them and challenge them and try to debate with them. But when AIs talk, there are some of the things that may be a bit uncertain, and how we can discuss the topic with that technology. So even if we use a lot of AIs, we still give personal traits and the characteristics to people. So are we going to give this bestow this the human side to AI? I feel like that is far in the future. So I believe that so that's why from that perspective, humans will still remain. And as tools, like people, will they still be useful? Because for AIs, they don't sleep, and if we can just provide them with like electricity, we can use them continuously. So if we approach it as a tool, and of course it's going to be very like outstanding and it will play its own role, but it could function, and you could also see the numbers. They also have great aspects to it. It has very intelligent because there are roughly like 8 billion of it, and if we can utilize it, then we can like innovate further. And from the perspective, existing AI, they are based on this data. So I feel like utilizing this AI based on that is a bit like the scope of it is very limited. But on the other hand, humans, there are some of the things that are not being reflected on data, and they have the insights and they have some kind of like creative thinkings. So as tools, I don't think that humans cannot be abandoned completely yet. So then if humanistic intelligence is still useful, then how can we utilize it? So if we talk about this like Chinese story, like ancient story, there's this one very like smart person, Taegalyang, but still we need other like people, because like even though like that smart person, we can utilize that person to do better. So we shouldn't be like felt like threatened just by looking into that case. And if we look into this like philosophical like humanities, that is something that only the leaders could think about. But like in the modern days, that is the question that we all can like have and think about, because we have this like great AI like supporter. We can the leaders who that leadership role could be like bestowed upon like everyone in the world. And so if we do that, then what Professor said, Kim Ji-hee, this like bottleneck, and in terms of this like economic perspective, we can resolve that issue. And this AI technology can disrupt creativity, and it could burden like, because disruption can be burden to the society. And if we just leave it alone to the market, then there could be some side effects, and it could take some time. And so in order for us to increase the efficiency of innovation, like what we need is that we need to have like this like policies to complement those like shortfalls. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your input. They have given us a very ample amount of time. I think there are three things in terms of responsibility of the AI, and he has emphasized that. And in essence, robots need to coexist and collaborate with human beings. And also, as Professor Park mentioned, like humanoid robots, the importance is growing. And last but not least, the theme of today's panel discussion is about a strategy where growth and distribution can occur at the same time. So first, I would like to invite Professor Ji-hee Kim. In the interest of time, it's regrettable that you have not been able to finish all your contents within your presentation. So the discussion that we've been doing for a long time. So what's the paradox in the age of AI, and how can the Korean economy overcome this? Can you provide your insight, please? I'm actually optimist of AI, but not a radical optimist. So I think AI won't be much different from electricity or internet. So the life before and after internet, I think the impact of internet would be greater than AI, and also the life before and after of electricity as well. So still, AI is important, and nowadays, I think we are experiencing the paradox of productivity. So there's going to be some duration for us to adapt to this new surrounding, and now I think we're experiencing this productivity paradox as well. And in the context of the Korean economy, compared with other countries, Korea is quite small, and policy can have a great impact on the industries. So if the productivity paradox prolongs, and when there's AI bubbles, so investment and the technological development, the path forward may diverge. But I think this is a grand flow, and so when we experience a longer period of productivity paradox, the direction itself, I hope that this won't change. And in a macroeconomic perspective, we should have patience. And even if we do have that kind of challenges and crisis, we should stick to our original idea of pushing this forward. And also in terms of distribution, can I add? Yes. In terms of distribution, up until now we've been talking a lot about growth. Now, in terms of distribution, we have talked about labor market as well. AI technology itself, well, whether we should distribute human or labor or not, it's not that kind of category. So it should be it has been complemented by highly skilled labor, so high income laborers, complementing them, and how to increase productivity by utilizing them. So that's why we've been talking about skill bias. But for AI, it has the potential to have both. For instance, Professor Park and Professor Kim mentioned case study is very active. So in businesses, when we implement AI, which labor or who is going to benefit from them? Actually, high income, up until now, high income labor benefited from the past developments, but moving forward, lower income and low skilled labor can also actually benefit from the development of AI. So when someone puts in his or her labor, the minimum amount of intellectuality that's required for that labor, the minimum bar is lowered down. So low skilled and low intellectual labor will have new opportunities for them. But for like attorneys and for junior attorneys, they're losing their jobs. But for senior attorneys, they're thriving with higher productivity. So the application would differ from sectors, but in terms of distribution, how the inequality is widened or narrowed. So for technology, value is added there to resolve inequality or to provide opportunities to the marginalized. That's something that we should contemplate in the policy-making decisions.
Thank you very much, Professor. So I think there are a few things that I should categorize, but actually categorize them further. You talked about 3 points. First of all, I think in your presentation you talked about growth, but also you may know that Professor Kim Jae-hee is won the Luca Award based on her work in wealth inequality. And second is a very important question about the philosophy of technology and shall we see technology as value neutral, or well, let's see it as a independent subject, and we want to think about how we will view AI. Third is for AI it does give democratic opportunities, but it also can worsen the already existing inequalities in society. So that is the amplification of inequality. So thank you for making those 3 points, and I would like our decision to follow those 3 guidelines. So Professor Kwon Young-sun, I have a question. So we talk about growth and distribution. And when we talk about basic income or taxes, there is some uncertainty whether these existing policies will be enough to deal with the inequality that will come with the age of AI. And you were at the AI for All paper. In your AI for All paper, you talked to Professor Kim Ji-hee. So could you please also And so, yes, I think we need to go back to the basics to find the starting point. So in all situations, we need to think about the dignity and happiness and rights to happiness of humans. And how will we continue to uphold these values in the changing world? And as you said in your question, currently all governments are working to improve their welfare, but of course that in itself is limited. So we may need a restructuring of welfare. And Professor Kim Ji-hee, as Professor Kim Ji said, he said that is the democratization of technology. But if you look at the past, we talked about every household having at least one computer. And in the future, that means the government will may need to provide one robot per each family. And so as Professor Kim Ji-hee said, until now, when new technology was made, it had a very strong correlation with education, and it would tended to amplify that inequality and bias. But now, if every family is to have it could be a physical robot, but a software, and if everyone has that, then we'll be really able to see the difference. It may be able to decrease the differences in knowledge or skill sets of humans, and if so, that will lead to the coming of a new paradigm. However, when this becomes a competition, when we think about competition, then things might not go as ideally. So we may not be able to reach this fair or equal society. So there are national level competitions, and there will be a difference between the companies who have that AI system and those that not. So the countries who have that system to introduce AI, then they will be able to survive. And so this is something that we also want to regard. So I believe balancing will become a very important issue. So I'd like to wrap up here.
Thank you very much. At the last bit, you have referring to what Professor Park mentioned, a system where the nation looks at the forest and where businesses looks at the trees. That kind of strategy is important. That's impressive. And following that, I think it can be related to Professor Park's presentation. You've mentioned about one household, one PC. And our president also set forth the agenda of one lab, one agenda. So we can be one lab, and one robot. So an agenda that we can push forth moving forward. Professor Park mentioned about strategy where one tree can grow, and the data optimized. It can be DDM or AI-based model. You've talked about the importance of that. In terms of policy, FINST is so the broadband connectivity. But there are points that's vulnerable to data, like governance. So in terms of that, AI ecosystem, so a system where we can utilize AI. Thank you very much for your question. I really want to answer this well, but I'll try my best. Data is an important resource. You have to create infrastructure first, and based on that infrastructure, you have to apply AI. That's the kind of process. So, for instance, there's Lunit, a company that's been listed in the KOSDAQ. Actually, in 2014, when I gave a presentation on Korean business startups, and the good example was Lunit. And with Lunit, I used the image of Korean medical checkup center. There's really good centers in Korea, and if you look up the Korean medical checkup centers, there's some centers you can look up to. I use that because in Korea, even if you're not sick, you can have annual medical checkup with full screen. There's no country like Korea in other parts of the world. So when we say which medical market is larger, US and Korea, of course the US. But if we say which country has more data in the medical sector, US or Korea, of course the US. But Lunit was able to scan the lungs and to find cancer, and they have become champion in this area with this small data and small medical market. Because Lunit was able to do so because of the medical checkup data that Korea has, because of that annual checkup. And our medical expenses are lower compared with other countries, and actually the country supports that for our nation's health and well-being as well. So that's why Korea been able to create this kind of bio data, initial data, and using that, Lunit was able to become this big company. And with the amount of money invested in that Lunit, they have become one of the most representative model, and they're still thriving as well. This is just an example, but even though Korea is small, there's little treasures hidden here and there. So when we create, so for humanoid robots, I give Lunit as a good example, and so for the framework that I gave in my presentation, the Gen I example, so I actually want to throw a question here. If you want to become a champion in Gen I, which college should we go? Many say China. Why? Because they have a lot of faces, because a lot of people, and low bar in regulations. So if you want to become the champion in facial recognition, you have to go to China than the US. China has the merits of being able to utilize the facial data. For Korea, we can create relevant data, like 1 trillion people. That's not really difficult. We can really become number one in this area, and also in the PR as well. As I've mentioned, like PRs using dogs, cats, depicted by AI. So that's the format that we have. it's not only National Geography that films animals to monetize that. Now we can create this video of rabbits talking, dogs talking through AI. So we can create this data, and there's infinite possibility there, and infinite roads ahead. So KAIST people who are very smart and creative, I hope they can utilize and tap into this possibility. By doing that, we'll be able to also lower the bar in regulation as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Park, for your insight. It was quite impressive. And Professor Kim Ji, when you studied North Korea's economy, you had hard time working on it. With the success of Lunit, I think there was this ground truth, this initial data. And so even though there was not that much of data, you were able to work on it, and I found it quite interesting. And you also talked about this facial recognition technology. And for me, I feel like there's something that could provide meaningful insight to our policy, because it could come down to this ethical guidelines, such as for the transparency and things like that. Because Korea is different from China. So for us, it is very difficult to collect information beyond this policy guidelines. So that's why they need to regulate it. And this ethical baseline is something that we need to think about together. So so AI literacy and AI ecosystem development. It'd be great if you could provide your insight to that. Earlier on, I want to talk about, because the first thing is this is a society that we have never experienced before. So I think there was this trigger point for our innovations, and as Professor Kwon Young-sun said, he talked about the computers. Because this computers were something that were held by only the professors, but through GUI revolution, everyone had this computers. So which means is that there was this cost cut through with the public's interest and their understanding of this computers. And through the networks, people were able to receive much more were able to gain intelligence for that. And also there were a lot of creative things going on with the smartphone, as smartphones emerged as well. And in the year 2023, with the generative AI's emergency, it all ties down to this regulations and policies. I think there was King Sejong made a Korean Hangul, because only the noble people were able to get an access to knowledge and enjoy that knowledge. But through this Hangul, Korean Hangul, there's such intelligence and knowledge were spread wide across Korea. So which means is that the policy and the culture need to support this technological innovation. And I feel that's the similar phenomena that's happening today, because especially the members of KAIST, they study a lot and they try to ask a lot of questions, and so they have that potential. But for us to become much more have explosive potentials, then we need this cultural and political support. But for AIs to be if you take a look at it, everything comes down to law. And when we talk about AI and law, everything's regulated. And because the lawyers, there are no engineers among lawyers, so that's why we try to benchmark the Europe's policies. And so I feel we are one of the first countries to regulate such technology, because when we talk about this economic agents, we need to redefine these economic agents, because we can utilize AI and those who can utilize AI are the early adopters. And I feel like the BEPS could be the users, well, the people who have this physical disability. They are actually considered as the like vulnerable groups in our society, but they can get help from AI and could become the active like economic contributors. So when we adopted Hangul, roughly like 90, they thought about what the 99% of people can do, but these days like such so the retirees, they have this like unspoken stuff, and because in like diverse situations we need this like unspoken data, how they resolve those situations. And for that, let's say there's Ryu Hyunjin, who is the baseball player, and if you want to have the next Ryu Hyunjin player, we need to have this like knowledge that runs through such all these eras, and for that we need to reestablish our thoughts on that. So we need to redefine the new economic agent, and we also need to open up the possibility that we can increase the pies by having this n number of jobs. And in order to do that, we need all these like policies, and for that, the engineers' involvement along the way is very important, because the legal like people who do not have like deep understanding of engineering, there may be like some shortfalls.
Yes, thank you very much for your inspirational speech. In the age of AI, institutions and legal framework is of course important, and in that I think STEM researchers should actively participate. Actually, the grammar of the existing economy should change to maximize innovation. But the current existing scheme does not encompass that, so I think we should discover new scheme for that. In the previous debate, we have talked about a lot, but Professor Kim also encompassed that. So I would like to give you some more time before we invite questions from the floor. Yes, thank you very much. I think it's going to take a lot of time to comment on all that, but I think I would like to add on the regulation part. The AI regulation in Korea is based on positive regulation, but when innovation takes place, we cannot consider that. Innovation requires a lot of effort and work, so I think it should be a negative-based regulation rather than positive. For instance, like China, they are making rapid advancements in AI development. They have eradicated existing regulation, and they have made very state-centered system. Well, that is very strong, but it can easily crumble from the outside impact. So, in essence, the system should be very flexible and strong. So, for Korea, I think regulation scheme and framework should go in such direction, and to create an environment where we can rapidly respond to changes. So in that sense, I hope people from KAIST will involve in regulation-related discussions. Thank you very much. Well, I'm enjoying this discussion very much, and now it had took up some time, so I would like to invite questions from the floor. First, yes. I have two questions. First, to Kim Ji-hee, Kwon Young-sun, and Kim Min-gi. And the second question is to Kim Jun-hyung. Professor Kim Ji-hee's presentation, we cannot ignore it past 150 years. For me, in the long run, I think it's the alpha here is population increase. I have checked 3, ChatGPT, Gemini, and also Bing Award. Economic growth. About economic growth, the 3 AIs gave wrong answers. I think Professor Kim Ji-hee's presentation was right. Some say the population increase is about 1.5%. So the plus alpha is 0.5%. So if we say for the coming 150 years or 10 to 50 years, like 50 years, the population increase can decrease, but we should see that as plus 0.5%. What do you think about that? And the second question is, you said that the bar for the skill lowers. As an advanced institute for research, can't this be a threat to us? As teachers and professors teaching at KAIST, wouldn't that undermine our values? What do you think about that? So I will have the mic to Mrs. Kim.
All right, so first Professor Kim Ji will answer. So first you talked about population growth. So thanks to population growth, we saw technology development because technology comes from humans. So AI, I think when it comes to the theory of growth, because people create technology, the development of population can lead to growth of economy. So the very foundation is population growth, and population growth is on the decline. And the difference, how AI is different from other technologies, is that it itself can create technology. So if such AI technologies, if it could supplement for the loss in population growth, I believe there is a potential for growth. And economists, they say there is a decrease in labor, and then there's also that decline in labor supply due to the decrease in population. There's a bigger decline in the supply. So if we don't have AI, then the supply will not meet the demand. So that is one prediction. And for higher education, as President Lee said, I heard something very interesting, a very interesting research that can help solve the issue. So if you go to AI conferences or economic conferences, there are LLM models. And there are technologies that are based on LLM. Is it Kepler or Newton? And the difference between those two is Kepler is a planet that looks at the rotation of planets and see where it will go. And so after the death of a Kepler, about 20 years later, then a neutron is born. So if you look at the cycle of the orbit of a planet, and you found out a rule of physics. So we want to know whether the current AI technology is a Kepler or a neutron. And let's say we newly train an LLM, then will it be able to find the orbit of a planet? Will it be able to find that rule of physics? And it couldn't. So currently, we are at the Kepler level, and AI cannot do the role that humans do, such as setting the basic principles. So still there are many things that humans can do, and we will have to continue to train humans to really reach their potential. I think that's a solution for higher education. All right, so thank you for asking the question to me as well. So I think 2026 will be a very important year if you look at KAIST history. I think KAIST as a whole, if we transfer to AI, then we will be able to grow. If not, then we will fall behind. So then how do we transfer to AI in terms of education? I think the old education models will not be valid, and we want to create talents that can ask questions and find new solutions. And so our professors, if all our professors also transform and teach them in the new ways. So we always talk about how will we teach our students in the era of AI. And another thing is research. So in terms of research, how will we bring AI in that? So in the labs, you would do the wet lab experiments that is outdated now, and you could make an AI or robot do the experiment, and then we will tell them do all the work overnight and then have it ready by morning. So we can do that. So in the long term, globally, KAIST's reputation is falling, unfortunately. And it cannot, and it's inevitable. You can see our rankings dropping. And the reason for that is because Chinese universities are rising. And we can't really, there's no way to avoid that wave. And one way to turn that around is to transfer to AI. If we increase our efficiency, then we will no longer be bounded by those numbers. And so I think AI, so what I can do is to make the policies so that our professors and students can transform and adapt to AI. And for students, making startups is the best way. So, for example, the student can receive credits if they make a startup. If they do a startup at a company, then an internship at a startup, then they can also receive credits for that. And for the students, something that we've tried to push for is to have students do research with professors outside of their major. And we weren't able to implement that in the past, but now because we are making the College of AI, we received a lot of government scholarship TO, student TO. So that TO is given to the students so that the students can move freely around different departments. So for example, even if they are in the mechanical engineering department, they can receive advising from a professor in nuclear engineering. So this is a way that we can increase our efficiency. And I think that is, there are several important goals for KAIST in 2026.
Thank you very much. So President Lee, can you give your... President Kim, can you give closing remarks? So today we have been talking about philosophy, economy, and business. So we've been talking about these grandiose ideas, and listening to your presentations, I think we're touching the front leg and the back leg of big elephant. Don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying that this is a grandiose idea that should be deliberated and contemplated by us continuously moving forward. So, regardless, I think AI transformation will be the most transformative compared with previous other revolutions. So AI superintelligence will change the hegemony of economy and politics around the world, and we will face a situation where dystopia is mixed with utopia. Professor Kim Ji-hee mentioned that when economists projected the future, I think they've been very conservative. But J.P. Morgan set out a report when financial crisis took place from BC 2 to 2000. They have looked at data of 10 big countries, how they shared wealth of the world, and they have drawn a graph on that. When you look at that, first industrial revolution, second industrial revolution had shifted the landscape. That's clearly shown in that. The first and the second industrial revolution, and the third would be the ICT transformation. And now, the era that we're living in and the changes that we face right now will lead to changes in wealth. And that course would be there's bumpy road ahead. So we've also seen the tulip bubble, the rail bubble, electricity bubble, and we're talking about AI bubble. And before that, we had a dot-com bubble from 1995 to 2000s. So there's many bubbles that I've been talking about. Bubbles will pop, but the M7 companies will have changes in their listings, but the infrastructure will remain. And that infrastructure should lead economic changes. So during the course, what's Korea going to do? That's the key point. And in that, I think KAIST plays a critical role here. So non-material values, technical values. So these two are represented in the AI age, and how we can relate that with the real economy. So AI college should come up with useful strategy. I think that's important. And one thing that's regrettable is that because of the international power struggle, how AI value and ethics and guidelines, and there should be regulations that prevent that. There should be opportunity for that. But now we're seeing international conflicts and wars taking place in some places in the world. These are the issues where one country alone cannot resolve. So that's what's lagging us behind. What can we do? The world politics leaders call for collaboration, but they are actually engaging in conflict, and they're engaging in this divided age. So the absence of leadership is something that I really call for, and how we can bridge the gap between the wealth and the poor, and how we can redistribute the wealth. Whenever industrial revolutions take place, the wealth gap widens. So with that, I would like to conclude my remarks. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your speech. So we had the panel discussion, and you have wrapped up the content of today, so I would not do that once again. And I hope that today's panel discussion will not remain within just KAIST and the economy in the age of AI, education, and the path forward for KAIST. I hope that today's discussion will serve as a milestone for those big ideas. So thank you everyone for taking part today, and especially to 5 professors. With that, I would like to conclude today's panel discussion. Thank you. Thank you very much. President Lee, can you close today's symposium?
Hello, everyone. Please have a seat. Thank you very much. So today we have heard many presentations. I don't feel exhausted at all, and the time went by very quickly. Thank you for your wonderful input and insights. And in AI, in the afternoon forum, we heard from many different perspectives. And one thing that I want to add is I think economy is something that creates added value, and it is the interaction of these things that create added value. Then there are many agents that create added value. That could be AI or robots. So these new agents, when these new agents join in the economy's rules and will change. So then how will we recognize them as economic agents? But already we have something called corporations. And so we have laws, and if you break the laws, then you have to pay a fine. So we think we will see a decline in taxpayers in our society, but then we will need more taxpayer money. So if we have less taxpayer money income, then I believe we will see the introduction of robot tax or AI tax, because that is the only way for us to all go forward. And if we want to, and I think also in Korea, if we also receive the value added from robots, for example, if you buy something from a vending machine, then we already receive, then there's a certain tax that is paid. And so, for example, the parking fees, there's tax on that as well. So I believe that we will be able to make a new economic order. So everyone, thank you for your wonderful presentations. Thank you. All right, we would like to conclude today's workshop here. Thank you.